Picture a small, weathered house on a reservation, a candle flickering in the window, placed there by a mother who hasn't seen her daughter in years. Her name is whispered in prayers every night, a name the world seems to have forgotten. This isn't a movie scene or a distant tragedy. It's the lived reality for thousands of Indigenous families across North America, where the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women cuts deeper than most can imagine. These women, Jurier's daughters, mothers, vanish, and too often, their stories are met with silence, indifference, or excuses. The pain of their absence lingers like an open wound, and the lack of answers compounds the grief. But this crisis isn't just about loss. It's about systemic failures, historical injustices, and a fight for change that's gaining momentum. Today, we're diving into the heart of this epidemic, sharing the stories of those stolen, exposing the systems that failed them, and calling for a future where Indigenous women are safe, valued, and heard. Let's begin with the numbers, though they barely capture the scale of this tragedy. In the United States, the National Crime Information Center reported over 5,700 missing Indigenous women and girls in 2016 alone. But only 116 were entered into the Department of Justice's federal database. In Canada, a 2014 Royal Canadian Mounted Police report documented over 1180 cases of missing or murdered Indigenous women since 1980. Advocates warn these figures are underreported. Cases are misclassified as suicides, accidents, or runaways, or they're simply never recorded. Why? Because the systems meant to protect these women are riddled with gaps. Listen to Lissa Yellowbird Chase, a tireless advocate whose niece, Ashley Loring HeavyRunner, vanished in 2017. Her voice cracks as she says, "We're told she's just gone, like she chose to disappear. But we know better." Nobody's listening. That silence is deafening. Mainstream media rarely covers these cases, and when they do, the narrative often shifts blame to the victims, painting them as troubled, as if their lives didn't matter. This crisis stays hidden because society has chosen not to see it, leaving families to carry the burden alone. To understand why Indigenous women are so vulnerable, we have to confront a painful history. Colonization wasn't just about taking land, it was about erasing people, cultures, and dignity. Indigenous women, revered as life-givers and leaders in their communities, were dehumanized by settlers. They were exploited, assaulted, and discarded. The residential school system, which ran in Canada until 1996, and in the US until the 1970s, tore Native children from their families, subjecting them to abuse and cultural erasure. Survivors carried trauma that echoed through generations, leading to poverty, addiction, and broken family structures, conditions that predators exploit. Today, Indigenous women face poverty at 3 times the national average, with limited access to healthcare, safe housing, or economic opportunity. In some US states, their murder rate is 10 times higher than for non-Native women. This isn't random. It's the legacy of centuries of systemic violence, a wound that's never been allowed to heal. Law enforcement's response, or lack thereof, pours salt into that wound. When an Indigenous woman goes missing, the reaction is often slow, dismissive, or outright hostile. A 2019 report by the Washington State Patrol found that police frequently misjudge Native cases, assuming victims are runaways or involved in drugs, stereotypes that overshadow the urgency. Cultural insensitivity compounds the problem. Officers untrained in tribal customs may mishandle evidence or alienate families, eroding trust. In one case, a family was told their daughter's disappearance wasn't a priority because she's probably just off partying. She was found dead a month later, her case barely investigated. Then there's the jurisdictional nightmare. On reservations, a crime might fall under tribal police, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the FBI, or state authorities, depending on the victim's status, the suspect's identity, or the crime's location. The 1978 Elephant v. Suquamish Supreme Court decision stripped tribes of the authority to prosecute non-natives on their land, creating a loophole where non-native perpetrators can evade justice unless federal or state agencies intervene, which they often don't. In 2017, federal prosecutors declined 37% of cases involving Indigenous women, citing insufficient evidence, even when families provided credible leads. This isn't just bureaucracy, its abandonment. Let's put a human face on this crisis, starting with Loring HeavyRunner, a 20-year-old from the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana. In June 2017, Ashley vanished after attending a powwow. Her sister, Kimberly, knew something was wrong when Ashley stopped answering her phone. Their father was gravely ill, and Ashley, who was close to him, would never have stayed away. Kimberly reported her missing to tribal police in the Bia, but the response was agonizingly slow. A 3-day search was conducted, then dropped. A witness reported seeing Ashley running from a vehicle on Highway 89 near the rugged Rocky Mountain front. Volunteers, not police, found a sweater and boots stained with what appeared to be blood, items a friend confirmed Ashley was wearing. The family turned them over for DNA testing, but 2 years later, they were told the evidence was misplaced. No results, no updates, no accountability. Kimberly has led over 120 searches herself, combing through forests and facing wildlife, while the BIA offered little support. At a 2019 Senate hearing, she said, "Our women are not disposable. The system needs to change." Ashley's case remains open, a stark reminder of how Indigenous families are forced to become their own investigators. Now, let's go back to 1971, to Helen Betty Osborne, a 19-year-old Cree woman from the Pass, Manitoba. Helen was studying to become a teacher, her dreams bright, despite the racism she faced in a predominantly white town. One night, she was abducted by 4 non-Indigenous men, brutally assaulted and murdered. The community knew who was responsible. Rumors swirled. Names were whispered. It took 16 years for charges to be filed, and only 1 man was convicted. A 1991 Manitoba inquiry laid bare the truth. Police ignored tips, dismissed witnesses, and failed to protect Indigenous women, their inaction rooted in systemic racism. Helen's case became a rallying cry, exposing the indifference that still plagues investigations today. Her family established a scholarship in her name, turning their grief into a legacy of education. But the pain of her loss lingers, a wound that speaks to every unsolved case. The ripple effects of these disappearances are profound. Families are left with an unbearable void, a grief that festers without closure. Children grow up without mothers, siblings become advocates, and elders mourn the loss of their daughter. In Indigenous cultures, women are often the keepers of tradition, the ones who pass down stories, songs, and ceremonies. When they're taken, the spiritual fabric of a community fray. Entire nations feel the loss as language classes go untaught, healing circles go unheld, and cultural knowledge fades. The silence from authorities amplifies this pain, sending a message that these women don't matter. But Indigenous communities are refusing to accept that message. They're fighting back, turning their grief into action, and demanding the world take notice. Grassroots movements are the backbone of organizations like the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center provide legal support, advocate for policy changes, and empower families. The Sovereign Bodies Institute, founded by Anita Lucchesi, a Cheyenne descendant, has built a database of over 4,000 cases, mapping the crisis to show its true scale. Every May 5th, the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, sparked by the 2013 murder of Hannah Harris, brings communities together in vigils and marches. Red dresses hang in trees, symbolizing lives cut short, while red handprints over mouths represent silenced voices rising up. These advocates aren't just raising awareness, they're saving lives. In Montana, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Task Force trains volunteers to conduct searches, equipping them with drones and GPS. Families like Kimberly's rely on these groups when authorities fail. Legislative efforts are slowly gaining traction, though progress is uneven. In 2020, Savanna's Act, named for Savanna LaFontaine Graywand, a pregnant Native woman murdered in 2017, was signed into law. It mandates better training for law enforcement, improved data collection, and protocols for handling Native cases. The Not Invisible Act, passed the same year, created a commission to bridge gaps between tribal, state, and federal agencies, bringing together survivors, families, and leaders. But these laws face challenges. Funding is scarce, and jurisdictional barriers remain. The Violence Against Women Act's 2013 reauthorization gave tribes limited authority to prosecute non-Native domestic abusers. But it doesn't cover other crimes like murder or kidnap. Advocates are pushing for bills like the Tribal Law and Order Act to be strengthened, giving tribes more power to protect their own. Change is coming, but it's not enough. Not yet. Social media has become a powerful tool in this fight, amplifying voices the mainstream ignores. Like #MMIW and #No More Stolen Sisters trend during awareness campaigns, sharing photos, stories, and pleas for tips. Families post videos like one from Ashley's sister, Kimberly, describing her last known movements, hoping someone will come forward. Virtual vigils connect advocates across borders from Alaska to Alberta. Platforms like TikTok and Instagram have given young Indigenous activists a megaphone, their videos reaching millions. But awareness alone isn't enough. You, watching this, can make a difference. Share this video with your friends, your family, your community. Support organizations like Native Hope, which provides counseling for families, or the Urban Indian Health Institute, which researches solutions. Write to your lawmakers, demand funding for Savanna's Act, and push for tribal jurisdiction reform. Your voice can shift the narrative, keeping these cases in the spotlight. Despite the heartbreak, there's hope in the resilience of Indigenous communities. In New Mexico, the Navajo Nation hosts healing circles where families share stories and elders offer prayers. In Canada, the Red Dress Project sees artists and activists hang crimson gowns in public spaces, a haunting tribute to the missing. The Blackfeet Nation in Montana organizes community searches. Cultural revitalization is a form of resistance. Language classes, traditional dances, and storytelling circles are reclaiming what was stolen. These acts of defiance say, we are still here and we will not be silent. The path to justice is long, winding through centuries of pain, but it's being walked by warriors, families, advocates, and communities who refuse to give up. Together we can build a future where Indigenous women are safe, where their lives are valued, where their stories are heard. Join us. Share this story. Demand accountability. Because every missing woman deserves to be found, every family deserves answers, and every community deserves to heal.